Let me ask you this. What do you understand were the motivations? So, you made a comment about the America coming in 1970 and pressing for a ceasefire, and they had financial motivations. What do you believe are the motivations, were the motivations of the UN and and the US in 1982 in Lebanon, and throughout the multiple ceasefires that they pressed Israel to have since 2005, when they gave Gaza back to the Palestinians? What was motivating those ceasefires?
Sure. So I think that we have to disentangle the concepts a little bit. I think we can't look at the UN and the US.
True. I agree, 100%. I'm sorry I agree with you 100%. One is completely corrupt, and one has motivations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we can't look at the two as a monolithic entity, and I think we also can't look at the United States as a monolith. Right.
Well, let's talk about the U.S. because I'm just going to say this point blank. You can comment on it too. The UN, in my opinion, I say this in any video I talk about the UN, they are the most corrupt organization in the world. They are one of the most dangerous organizations in the world because they come under the guise of peace, and they are actually a smokescreen in many instances for hostility against Israel, which only means hostility for Arabs. So I think that they have a lot of blood on their hands.
For sure.
So
all around the world, by the way.
Right, all around the world. Correct.
Also in Rwanda, also in Cyprus, everywhere.
Yes, as you discuss in the book.
Yes.
Yes, about Rwanda. Yeah. So, so in some respects, there's not much to discuss about the UN. Unfortunately, they're just completely corrupt. The U.S. What was their motivation in Lebanon and also in Gaza in trying to impose ceasefires? Sure.
Okay, so I think even when we talk about the U.S. is also not a monolith. And this is actually a point that the Lubavitch Rebbe emphasized, and I think that's an interesting thing that people think the Lubavitch Rebbe is like this this mystical figure, the nice rabbi who smiled and gave out dollars and said like some inspirational quotes, but he was incredibly well read. He himself was an engineer. He briefly served in the United States Navy. And worked, to be more precise, he worked in the shipyard in the United States Navy. The point is he was very much a man of the world and very much a man of realpolitik. And one of the points that he makes is that we can't look at the United States as a monolith. We have to look at it as a conglomerate of a lot of different entities, very often with different motivations and different interests. And not only with different motivations and different interests, but there is a major evolution of interest over time. Right, so meaning the Rebbe looked, he said, like, we can't look at the United States as a whole. We need to look at who is the current sitting president, who is the current Secretary of State. Does the Secretary of State have an agenda which aligns with that of the president, or maybe it's at odds with that of the president? Right? What about the Department of Defense? Maybe the generals in the Department of Defense have one opinion, and the Secretary of State has a different opinion. And I think if one studies a little bit of United States history, right, one can see that this sort of occasionally schizophrenic reality plays out in a lot of America's dealings on the world stage and a lot of the evolution of America's positions from one conflict to another, be that as it may, right? So in 1982, let's say, right, and in 1982, Ronald Reagan was the sitting president, right? So I think Ronald Reagan opened up or gave Israel a lot of maneuvering room in terms of what it was able to do, right? And the State Department, however, was always pushing for a certain agenda in the Middle East. And at the time, what the State Department generally wanted was they wanted positive relationships with the Arab countries or with the Muslim countries in order that the Muslim countries would allow global shipping routes to function in the best way possible, and that they would also give a lot of oil, which was supporting the American world order. So for that reason, America wanted to be in the good graces of Saudi Arabia, a major oil exporter. It wanted, to the extent possible, to be in the good graces of Iran. And I think President Carter's weakness led to the fall of the Shah in Iran, right? But that said, America generally was looking to maneuver for its own geopolitical stability with the Arab countries and with Russia, who at that time was aligned with the Arabs. So very often, America was looking at Israel as a pawn on the chessboard. Now, if we look at Gaza in 2005, I think there we have to look at the motivations of George W. Bush, right? So Bush was looking to create peace in the Middle East. It clearly didn't work out, right? But he seemingly naively believed that if Israel would only give up some land for peace, he brought into that conception of land for peace. He seemingly naively believed if only Israel would give away a little bit of land for peace, then things would work out. And in a certain sense, you could look at the Bush presidency in a large part as trying to finish what his father started. His father was looking to make peace in the Middle East, to take out Saddam Hussein. And in many respects, George Bush's father was the one who started or got the ball rolling in a very significant way to get or to create Palestinian autonomy. And Palestinian autonomy was a precursor to the state. At least in the Bush administrations, there seems to have been a desire to create stability in the region. They thought there would be stability in the region, there'd be less wars if the Palestinian issue was resolved. And then I think there was also a genuine, if naive, desire for peace. Even let's say the Carter administration. Carter pressured Israel into the disastrous Camp David Accords. But even there, I think Carter genuinely did want peace in the Middle East. He just didn't know how to go about it.
Right.